Blunt Cut Metalwork, March 27, 2019. Today we have a little conversation about CPM T15. The reason why I am enthusiastic about it, or think it's why T15 is a good steel. Similar steel to T15 is a S390, but basically, let's go to the spec of the T15. T15 have a good amount of carbon. I put next to Maximet here, but we'll discuss between the two. So if you, for me, I would think early on I liked CPM M4, and I like it. But when I sharp it to really high sharpness level, and when the Rockwell, I got a Spyderco, the Bradley, I think Model 1, I think it was 63 Rockwell, and I sharp really super sharp. But then I keep losing the edge. And so, anyway, but I like the really sharp, keen edge, because you can really say that it's very sharp. But the retention aspect of it is what makes me think that there must be a better one. And also what similar steel that have certain composition, except it will have something else extra, could improve the property. So this is a conversation here. So in terms of speaking, so this is a carbide scraper at a 60-degree angle here, and most of the carbide, the tool, whether the drill bits or scraper here, it has about 10% to 15% of cobalt. The cobalt is the matrix would hold a little particle of carbide, of tungsten carbide, in place. But if you have nothing but cobalt matrix, and you can get the Rockwell hardness equivalent of, when you tested that matrix, would be about somewhere in the 40 HSC. And so we all know that, okay, the cobalt matrix is very strong in terms of resilient, except it's highly elastic, but it's not strong enough to resist displacement or being pushed aside, to move, to plastic movement. So, and now you have a matrix, the ferrite-based, iron-based matrix. In this case, for most of the knife steel, you have martensite matrix. And a pure martensite matrix, the highest level would be about 67 Rockwell or 68 Rockwell. But for the toughness of that matrix, in terms of to give it enough, you can have a full range of elasticity, how much you can bend, and it return to true, like a spring. And then it has some plasticity, so you want that matrix about 60 martensite matrix, you want probably is in about 65, 66 Rockwell. And so now you can, and when you embed a lot of particle in it, the Rockwell go up. And that's why, for example, like this 68 Rockwell T15 knife here, at 68 Rockwell, it can be harder. But the important thing I would mention was it have to have a full elasticity range, the flux, and the some plasticity, that would deform. This edge, I ding on some glass. I've been cooking with this T15 here, and I accidentally ding a few times onto these bacon, not plexi, but anyway, coin glass, very hard, and so they ding. So in other words, you have flattened sideways deformation. I don't think it has smooth in as much as it sideways a little bit. But anyway, but there's no chip in here. So okay, now we go back to the composition now. 1.6% carbon will give the carbide volume. If you translate it, one, it hardened. And it should be somewhere, with this composition here, you can get, I think you can compute it out, but you got 16%. You can get 16 or 15%, depend on how much chromium it is in solution, and because chromium makes larger carbide. But in this case, this steel, basically hot hardness steel, pretty much any steel that with a lot of cobalt, it can handle high temperature. So is tungsten. That's why all the when you have all the probe for super hot temperature, it's a tungsten probe. It's not other type of probe, because again, tungsten is very, very large in terms of heavy element, 3 times heavier than iron. So that's why, okay. But that's also the point why I'm going to go into. But anyway, so there's enough carbide to, you have your matrix. So the matrix is, let's pick a matrix in this case, let's call it 65 Rockwell. Say 65. Now you have a bunch of particles in it. These particles, like, think of your mud and rock boulder. It protects the mud. I mean, the clay around it. So you have clay and you have a bunch of rock. Those rock will protect the clay if something rubs against it. So, but there's enough, you have a coverage on the surface. So you have abrasion when something glide by, then it will not able to dig in. But when you go into like dirt or sand, depend on the fineness of it. I mean, like sand. One, they go way too small, and then now, and enough of it, uneven pressure into the matrix, then they can, they can abrade it off. But again, most of the time when you encounter something like sand, it's a very large particle. And so also a lot of, silicate in plant can be thin, so they can actually get into the, now your matrix is the one that being worn out. And then of course, you'll be undercut. You have carbide on there, and then you wear out the matrix. But if the matrix itself is harder than the silicate, silicate is about 64 Rockwell. It's about, talk about when you have head on them and rub against each other. But of course you can have high pressure point, and you can dig into things. You're like a baseball bat can smash a rock, and the rock will break. So of course the baseball bat got messed up too. But however, in the process of impact, thing can get in terms of whether it break, in terms of fracture or deformation. So anyway, and chromium, chromium is, well, most of the time when we talk about chromium, we're thinking of corrosion resistant. And then you create pretty much the free chrome in the matrix, distributed around the matrix. And then when you got oxygen, and they create a layer, oxygen create more oxide with chromium to create a layer, and passivation to protect. In other words, they already have that layer. They don't have any more porous, so that oxygen can go deeper to interact with iron and carbon, but mainly iron. So, but 4 is not enough. But also, again, I mean, you can there is a certain balance amount how much chromium and how much carbon. If you have too much chromium and too much carbon that doesn't bind with anything to form a carbide, then they will bind with chromium. So anyway, so that was just a little methodology here there. So 4 is a good amount, and while molybdenum here will help us say hot hardness a little bit, but also form some sort of composite carbide along with chromium or other element. So, but in this 2 steel, I say, okay, I will get hot hardness and other attribute from cobalt and tungsten. So, don't care too much about molybdenum here. And go to vanadium. The one I have, I mean, the composition I have is about 4%. And Maximat here have like 50% more, which is 6%. And but again, compared to the relative of the carbon, so Maximat is a lot higher carbide volume, and a lot of things is higher. So I think if you look at it, CPM S30V, 4% also like M390 or many other steel, 4% about that range, it provides plenty of coverage for wear resistant for basically the primary carbide vanadium. So if I take that as a very good amount of coverage, protecting the matrix and able to deal with foreign abrasive stuff, then any amount above 4 and below 5 be enough. 6 is extra, or more like you would go and say how high you want to go. And of course, when you talk about like 10V, then you have 9%, and 15V, that is somewhere like 14% or something. That ridiculous amount, or not? I don't remember exactly the amount, but it's very high. But given that the matrix can hold on to the particle, these carbide. Well, anyway, so now let's jump to tungsten. Tungsten is, because these are the percent of mass. So 12% of tungsten would, if you do an per atom count, you count. 1 atom of tungsten is 3 times heavier than vanadium, about. So therefore, 12% of mass percent of tungsten is equal to about, atom count wise, we have about similar atomic count as 4% vanadium mass percent. So in other words, these are atom-wide, so you have 2 types of carbide that will provide a lot of coverage. The vanadium carbide I expect to be between 1 and, given that it would form itself, I mean not composite and combine with a bunch of things together, vanadium would be about between 1 to 3 micron. Tungsten is a lot heavier, and so it doesn't move or bind together into a big clump as much as vanadium would be. So tungsten carbide tend to be a lot smaller. So now you have envision that again S30V, except you reinforce with a smaller carbide. In this case, tungsten carbide, except the number of carbide count. If this one, I get for example here, but not exact the size and the count is, if this thing was, to make it more simple, if this thing is if this thing is a 2 micron diameter, right? And if this thing is 1 micron in diameter, so in other words, there will be 8 more times the number of carbide count of the smaller carbide. So now, put on that ratio, now I got 8 times as much of small carbide, a tungsten carbide here. So that will cover and protect the small carbide, protect the matrix, and protect the bigger carbide. It can do its job. And so the cobalt, that matrix we're talking about before, cobalt is very efficient to distribute themselves around and also around the interface of all these carbide. Now the 5% is say, okay, let's put it right next to all these particles, carbide here, tungsten and vanadium carbide. And I again, this time mental calculation projection, 5% will provide most of the interface needed to hold on to tungsten carbide and some vanadium. The rest going to be, the matrix would be the monazite matrix. And now for Maximat, look at that and say, okay, because I have a lot more carbide, in it a lot more cobalt. And so, but for whether they need 10%, you see, this is pure tungsten here. There are a lot of particles in here. They are for this one, they have fairly fine size tungsten, where they call grain, but actually I'm not going to think of it as a particle. And in this matrix, and they got 10 to 15%. When this is pretty much pure tungsten, right? Except for cobalt. And so, why do you need that level? What all the extra cobalt going to do? And I think the name of the game, it would be always add toughness. Remember how easy it is for the cobalt matrix to plastic flow. So that's why they have extra cobalt here. That's why I think they were chosen to be so. But now if you were going to the super fine edge here, right? You go down to that. And, that translate into, well, you still intermix 40-something Rockwell at the very apex here. This thing of T15 only have half. So I have half number of, because there are 4 of these things distributed everywhere. So in other words, sometimes like you're looking at that, for me, I'm looking at like a chain. Sometimes weak link along that chain. In other words, it's not just a weak link. How many weak links? That is the strength of your chain. Of course, statistically, if you say you have 100 link, only 2 or 3 bad link, it won't. It's not the same thing as will break the whole chain. I'm talking about what on the apex here, your edge. And so once that area been yielded because of a weaker matrix, then you get dull. The edge is dull. So that's why I think that a 5%. The reason I chose T15 for 5%. And the other element is not as important here. Actually, I do care about silicon. A lot of time also, in order to control the transformation, a lot of crucible steel, not this one, have very high silicon. And again, silicon is, for me, I think of it more of what I use the correct word here is inclusion. I feel that way. I understand it's about a stable layer, austenize, and all like that. Because of, actually, you can go down to really deep in physics and things like that, but that's not, we don't want to go there. I think the easiest correlation that you can find out, you look at the steel that have a lot, the higher the silicon it is, and now when you try to sharpen it to, say, a straight razor edge or something below 500 nanometer radius. Now try to do that with the steel that have really high silicon content. Let's say 0.5 and up. Then you will realize that why I keep losing my major keen edge is not there. The smooth edge is not there. Of sure, you can lose the smooth and you still have 2D. That, again, it's only about what you chase after. It's about stability of the edge. If you shape it to be a certain way, you want to stay that way as long as you can. Not say, oh, now I got 2D or aggressive. No, you just fail. It fell to a different state. It's pretty much, think of an engineer spec. That's it. If I want the engineer spec, how long can I operate with that spec? Not some, degrade into a certain state and then somehow make lemonade out of lemon. That's not that. So now how this, I've been tested a lot with T15 lately, and lately I've been busy and also, but I mainly tested with this T15 a lot. Basically, for this edge here, behind the edge right here, it's about, I put in 14 degrees per side, and the you can hardly see the sharpening bevel because, it's thin. It's less than 10,000 of an inch there. And I pretty much cut up the whole chicken, go through the bone. I don't chop, I press down. And there's no ding, I just cut into the bone, everything like that. I did not cut through the thigh bone, that to be clarified. But overall, I want to cut it as long as I can and see how this holds up. Okay, so why did I brought it up on that point? I have to test it a lot before I commit to get a whole bunch of this steel. Again, I've showed this steel for a while, and I'm curious for a while, and for this smaller knife, it's for the bigger knife, I think it's stable is about, let me look and see what it's stable at. Yeah, I got a big knife. This thing here is stable at 66.5. And I would temper at 425 degrees. And this is the T15 here. It's, in other words, you can chop it with it. So I think in terms of if one you're looking for, I've been using it so this color a little bit. Again, because you only have this much chromium. So I cut a lot of lime and pepper and many other things. I think cutting the coconut actually stained it the most. Young coconut. And also I opened young coconut with this knife also. I did not chop. I just press it to cap it. Instead of cap it by chopping, I cap it by just press it, cut right through, got a hole so I can drink it when I eat the young coconut. There's no problem. You're not going to wear out your carbide. You wear your matrix, and your matrix want it bent over, and that's it. It's dull. It's dull by sideways deformation or fracture. So anyway, this is fairly thick. Actually thicker here, and then I thinned it down because they didn't have the right balance before. But when, like Maximate, if I was going to go I got some, like for example, I mean, like this 10V at 66.5 Rockwell. This will deform if I smack it with a nail or cut it with something, rather than it will chip, because it's capable of going to like 69 Rockwell. But I lower enough so that the matrix is lower. The matrix is going to be down for this higher, like 9% now percent of vanadium here. I want the matrix probably up 64, 65, or 64. And the carbide, you got to add it up to particle strengthening to strengthen it up. And so the matrix can hang on to the carbide effectively. But anyway, I mean, I think this, I think I'm going to make a lot more and test a lot more and make a lot more. I use a lot more T15, but a lot thinner. This thing at 148, thin down to 118 here. I got another one stay at 148, but I'm getting a lot more of 90 and 72. So 72,000. It's thinner, and so I don't have to spend all the time. I talked too long, and I got past the cutoff point. Basically, this steel, in order, if you're going to worry about losing the temper by mistaken when you grind in near the edge there and with some belt, and you got to heat it up. It has to be really, really hot before you mess up. We have to be totally red, and the steel dust is going to be totally off color. But of course, I always do one grind, dip in water and things like that, because I deal with other steel too. So anyway, all right, well, thanks for joining the conversation.